Hi there, it's Denise Eckert, and I love coming on here and sharing different techniques and ideas to help you lower the stress in your life. And today, my guest is Rochelle Welch, founder of Joyful and Present and a licensed clinical social worker with over 25 years in the therapy room. She helps high achieving women move out of chronic stress and burnout, and not through more coping strategy, but by working with the nervous system itself. So, Rochelle, welcome.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks for having me on.
Now, what inspired you to do this type of work?
Well, uh, my clinical career started years ago, as you mentioned, but I just really get excited about seeing women be able to take strategies that they can implement and really get lasting change that they don't have to keep coming back to a provider for, but that they own, and that nervous system change really resides with them.
Awesome. And okay, so we're going to talk about the nervous system. Can you explain what the nervous system does in our bodies and why that's an
Well,
issue with stress?
yeah, I think it's more difficult to say what doesn't our nervous system do in our bodies, because our nervous system, it controls everything from the things that we're not in control of that happen on an autonomic level, like our digestion, our temperature, our immunity, all of that. We can't control our breath. It comes automatically, and yet we can control that with our conscious brain. But our nervous system, I'm sure you see it in your work too, and with the women you talk to, Denise, it just impacts everything. So when our nervous system is dysregulated, and I say dysregulated or stuck in fight or flight or burnout, when it is dysregulated, our body doesn't digest food the way that it should. We become emotionally reactive in ways that maybe don't align with our core values and who we want to be. It impacts our body, holds weight so to keep us safe. So the nervous system is really designed to just keep us safe and protect us. And when it's not functioning optimally, meaning it's stuck in fight or flight on a normal Tuesday, it really disrupts so many systems in our body. And I learned this clinically, of course, but my daughter had a pretty complicated head injury recovery back in 2018 after a concussion. And I just started really learning and seeing through her. It impacts the way your eyes track, your nervous system impacts autoimmunity. So just so many layers of the nervous system, which is why I get excited about it, because we see such transformations. People will come in with one goal. I want to not have brain fog, or I want to be able to sleep better at night. And then they just get all these compounding results because it does impact so much.
And what do you see as a therapist as the biggest culprit that does dysregulate our nervous system?
That's a good question, Denise, because it can be different. I mean, complex PTSD was my clinical specialty. So, of course, sometimes there are just really big things that happen in life, and then the nervous system learns that it needs to be on guard. It's not safe to help you relax. But what I find very commonly, and what I think the biggest culprit is, because it sets us up to be more susceptible for things like PTSD or burnout, is that really early brain development, how things are wired and fired together before we even had conscious memory. So things that internally fire in that subconscious mind are the primary activators of that fight or flight, which is why women can say, I don't understand why, because my life is safe. I know I'm okay. Or it just, or I've retired. I've taken a sabbatical. My kids have grown. I'm in an easier season of life. And yet I can't shut my mind off at the end of the day, or I'm not able to relax. I constantly feel like I'm hedging against a threat, even though there is one. So I think the bigger cause of that is what's established very, very early on, and then practiced through thousands of repetitions throughout our lives.
Yeah, and that's pretty scary because I can completely relate because my podcast has just been accepted into a network, so good for all of us.
Congratulations!
And so basically, my workload has diminished because at the moment I don't have 20 pots on the stove anymore because I'm focused on one thing. And to be honest with you, in the last couple of weeks since this has happened, I feel very anxious. And it's weird because I've gone from working crazy hours to stepping back and feeling anxious. And it's weird because I've always been the person who works in stress. And I love working in stress because it gives you that challenge and you come up with your ideas and you get excited. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like when we thrive in stress and how that's good, but then when is it not good?
Yes, I love that you're mentioning that because that's exactly what we find. And a lot of times, the women that come are very much like you. They've been doers. They get things done. They can multitask. They can, hyper responsible, hyper productive. And so they don't necessarily identify. And I love it that they don't identify. I really don't like it when people say my anxiety or my this, because I really think it limits them and labels them. But it is like a high functioning fight or flight activation. And there's a difference between someone who had a really calm, safe baseline and then they go through a trauma or they go through a season where it just demands a lot. And then you have to look at those symptoms and bringing those symptoms down so they can get back to their baseline. But for many women, the baseline was always high activation. Go, 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 do like a very high hypervigilance that was in productivity or doing things for everyone or perfectionism. And so they don't necessarily see it as a problem because it's made them successful. It makes people around them happy. They seem to be able to pull it off. And so, but it's again in that subconscious, there's a driver that somewhere they learned that this feels good, this feels safe, this is my norm. And our nervous system, if anything, wants to be super efficient. So just like when we get into our car every day, we don't want to have to read the manual on how to drive a car. We've just practiced it and now it's automated that. And so patterns like overperforming, overfunctioning, doing many things, our brain's very efficient and it just keeps running that old program long after it was needed. So it was adaptive in the beginning, like it's what was modeled or what worked well in your home of origin or through early life experiences. And then your brain practiced it and just became very efficient and it runs that old program despite what's happening in your life. So it feels normal. And so sometimes women will say, I feel guilty as they start to heal and get better and release that. They'll say, I feel a little bit guilty that I'm not worrying or my mind wasn't spinning and it almost felt like something was missing. So if you're not careful, moving into a new season or even you start calming. People start calming and doing things that are very good for calming. And yet that change away from what's familiar, your brain's like, danger, danger. You don't have a million things going on, Denise. How are you going to keep safe? It's automated and it's related to safety. And that's what I love helping women break free from, because I don't know, does it feel like to you, sometimes it feels like that's kind of part of my superpower. One of my clients, Chris, she said she had a Superwoman cup on her mug on her desk and she'd run her own business for 30 years. And that's really what led her to, she was thinking, was she going to have to sell it or whatever? But she said, I didn't know who I was, that hyper capable woman anymore. And so, but it's hard to release when it's something that's brought you success and that you, I don't know, probably love doing. So it's one of those things that there's a lot of reinforcement for.
And I love what you said too, because it's almost like you're compounding things as well over the years. And then all of a sudden, and you're familiar with that stressful feeling. So when you do want to step back, how do you transition?
Yeah. It's everything that we practice, as I know you teach and so many others teach. It's like it has to be foundational and it has to be repetitious. So we change it in the same way that it was wired in. It was wired in through repetition. It was wired in through small steps. So starting with even a couple minutes of stillness and building on that. The thing that I love helping people understand is if there's a core subconscious program, right, which there always is, it's not okay to relax, or I have to be busy or I have to always be in control. There's always some subconscious belief, right? But those subconscious beliefs stay locked in until we can regulate. And then when we can regulate that deeper level of shifting those subconscious beliefs comes through stillness and calming, but then identifying the pattern and making subtle changes to that pattern. So, for instance, if the pattern were perfectionism, it might be doing something 80% well and turning it in. If the pattern were I overanalyze everything and can't shut everything off, right? It might be simple. You have to act out the intervention that goes along with the belief. So that comes with some self recovery, because if it's overthinking, it might be like, what am I fearful of? Is it if I make a decision, it's going to be the wrong one and I'm going to criticize myself? So calming enough that we can really observe the mind, and then where that pattern is, how do I make subtle shifts in that repetitiously until the new thing feels normal? Does that answer what
Yeah.
you were asking?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
And I mean, I grew up in an era where busyness was a marker for success. And that is
absolutely.
hard to break. I mean, even yesterday, wanted to stay off the computer. So I was reading books, and the guilt, you're supposed to be doing something. You're supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to be, no, I want to read this book. I want to relax. I want to sit outside. And it's hard to do. It's hard to switch it.
That's right.
And I know I need to do it. But yeah,
Yes.
it's a very common issue amongst women, and especially at our age, because at this point in our age, we aren't carrying 20 balls of the family because the kids are normally out of the house. And so we do have time that we can take things and step back and give ourselves some grace. And it's hard to do. It really is.
It often intensifies it. So
Hmm.
sometimes when kids go off to college, or when I step into retirement, or I want to pull back on some things, they'll notice it, because it's like that energy doesn't have the same amount of places to go, so the restlessness becomes more apparent. And then also, like you're saying, I mean, you're in a good spot though, Denise, because you're saying, and what many of us have experienced, I've experienced it myself. I did this work clinically for many, many years, but I have those same belief patterns. But that is the beauty of doing the calming, so that you can see the patterns, because that is really observation of the mind is what you need to be able to first shift it. It's not the final layer, because again, you have to practice the new thing, and as you've mentioned, it's uncomfortable in the beginning. So I tell my ladies, like, sometimes it's the not doing that is the victory, because the doing helps you feel safe, but it perpetuates that stress pattern. But there's a quote by Bessel van der Kolk, who I love. Are you familiar with him?
No.
He wrote "The Body Keeps the Score," and so, because a lot of people will get to your age, my age, our age, this midlife age, and their body starts showing the symptoms of the chronic stress. So like the body is expressing what our mind didn't even realize it was holding. And so he has a quote, and he's written "The Body That Keeps the Score." He lectures on that a lot, but he says, as long as you keep secrets and suppress information, you're fundamentally at war with yourself. And so it's like the critical issue is letting yourself know what you know. And so, like you saying, you identify that about yourself, and you have this connection to, this was part of the culture, this was in my family, maybe these events through my life have reinforced that. That's a key piece of letting yourself know what you know, and then being able to release those beliefs through belief, through emotion, through calming, and through exercising the new action.
Now, for someone that's listening to this and recognizes themselves that, yeah, I need to make a difference. You already mentioned a couple simple steps, but can you just sort of rehash those simple steps that we can take to make a difference right now?
Yeah. Uh, First of all, I think really the breathing and those kinds of things that you're really doing to calm and get into your body. And as you just mentioned, sometimes it's so hard to resist the urge to go do the familiar thing. So minutes of stillness where you are resisting the urge, calm, breathing, mindfulness practices, and then pay attention to the thoughts rather than being annoyed by the thought that comes in. Open yourself to some examination of it and ask yourself the question, what would have to be true for it to be okay to relax? For it to be okay to read this book? Because if you ask questions of yourself 2 or 3 layers deeper, you'll be able to identify that core driver. And then, so I don't know if that's simple. I think everything in this field is somewhat simple in concept. It just has to be done with repetition. Does that answer your question, Denise?
Yeah. Now, you talk about sort of questioning it. Can you just walk us through an example of questioning or getting to the
Yeah.
core?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, it's really important to lead with curiosity and compassion. So, for instance, in the example you gave, where you want to sit and read a book, but you feel that almost angst that comes up because you feel guilt.
Mhm.
And guilt is a powerful chemical cocktail. And so when that guilt comes up, your mind has a story about that. Right? I should be doing this. I haven't done this. I'm being lazy, or it's not okay for me to relax. So many times we hear that and we either one obey, like I'm going to go get up and do another load of laundry or get on my computer at 11 o'clock at night or whatever you may be tempted to do, whatever is your go-to that takes away that guilt. This is okay. Now I'm back in my familiar way of operating. So our tendency is we feel that it's strong. We don't want to move through the guilt. We don't want to listen to that story. So we get up and do the thing because it's more comfortable than practicing the new things. So interrupting it and saying, okay, I'm rather than I should get up because I've got this email to return and I've got this going on tomorrow and I could just knock this out tonight. That's the familiar story. But questioning it would be say, what is the sponsor? Like, what is the sponsoring thought? Not that I have this many emails to return and I have this to do, but what is that sponsoring thought? Be curious about that. It's not okay. It might be it's not okay for me to relax. Or if I'm not busy, everything falls apart. Or it's not okay to feel this loneliness that's coming up as I try to read my book. So be curious about what that underlying thought is rather than the familiar story of I should. And then ask yourself and have compassion for that. Like, have compassion for that part of you that's had such pressure to just keep going and going and going. And then I'm sorry, I said one tendency is to obey it and just go do the familiar thing. Sometimes the other thing is to shut it down altogether and we get busy scrolling or numbing out. Oh, and we can get kind of frozen. And so neither one of those, one reinforces it, one avoids it, and what we resist persists. So the questioning with curiosity and compassion really let us enter into it. Right? And that's where it becomes more pliable. We can say, what would have to be true for it to be okay for me to relax? Do I have the same rules for myself that I do for other people? Yes, success is a value. What also is a value? Is health a value? What other values are present in this decision? And make that decision from your adult brain, even if it feels uncomfortable. Use the wisest part of you to make the decision, not just the part that's been running the show the longest. Is
Wow,
that
that's very
helpful?
powerful. That's very, very powerful. And it's almost like when people start creating boundaries, it's like little baby steps. It's almost like that, so that you start feeling comfortable and then do a little bit more and do a little bit more. And yeah, that's very, very powerful. Thanks for sharing that, Rochelle. Because a lot of
Oh,
times we don't give ourselves that grace.
right.
And even just what you said just made me feel a lot more relaxed, to be honest with you. It's great. So I
Good.
understand you have a free training that you can offer the audience today. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's how we kind of introduce people to how we work with people, Calm Without Compromise. It's a free masterclass that kind of walks through these underlying cause and what I call the four stress signatures, which you mentioned. You've mentioned a couple of them on here: high performance, high pleasing, high producing, and protection, high functioning freeze. So it kind of explains those underlying drivers and how we address reframing it. So I think what you just were so, I love when I speak with people who are vulnerable, and I like doing that too, sharing my own story and my own experience, because I really think it helps people connect. People could connect to what you're saying about having being at this place in your life where you have the opportunity to rest, and you've definitely earned it, and yet have a hard time allowing yourself. So thanks for being vulnerable about that. And you mentioned boundaries too, which I've personally had to do a lot of work on over the years. And probably every woman I talk to has some need to set boundaries, either with other people or with herself. One of the same woman that I shared, Chris, who had the Superwoman mug, she said, I learned boundaries were for myself. I had a hard time setting boundaries with myself. And so, but that is the beauty of the work. It does impact our relationships with others, but it impacts us. And really, with boundaries, I'll tell people, like, if you set a boundary, but you don't have an inner belief that matches, you'll set the boundary on a Monday, and by Wednesday, you'll have, or later that afternoon, have gone back on it because it violates a core belief that you have. Maybe that it's not okay to do things for myself, or it's not okay to say no, or I should always give until I can't give anymore, or something like that. So all of those things are things we see a lot of growth in and a lot of freedom in. And people still are, they're even more successful because they're able to open up that creative energy rather than that constant push that so many of us feel when we're driven to produce and perform.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've been self-employed probably my whole life. So yeah, you have that drive. And I'll be honest with you, I did cheat yesterday. I think I checked my emails a couple times, but then I went, I don't need to answer this today. Like, but you
And that
just
was, yeah, that's a great, that's an intervention, right? That's an intervention, Denise, because you saw what the pattern was and you went to do it and you did a little bit, but then you came back and you said, this isn't urgent.
Yeah.
Like, this can wait. And that's that you're in that stage of, and there's basically four stages of brain change. It's unconscious incompetency. We don't know that we don't know. And then there's conscious incompetency, like I can see it, I just have no idea how to change it. And then there's conscious competency, which is I see it and I'm working hard to change it, but it's hard. That's that third phase, and that's where you are. And then eventually you do that enough times, then it's unconscious competency. The new thing is just now your new norm. So just keep that up.
I love that. So we're going to wrap this up, Rochelle. So what
Okay.
are your final words of wisdom to the audience today?
My final words to the audience would be, don't ever say that something just because it has been that it must be. We have brains that are, we get a new set of neurons every morning. We can repattern and rewire those for however long. We have women, I've somebody just on my call last night who's in her 60s, starting a new career. She's lost 30 pounds. She's developed a new level of confidence she never had. And I love people that are lifelong learners, that are always willing to say every day is a new day. So don't count yourself out, and don't ever think that just because something has been, it's not your personality, it's not your identity, it's just a pattern, and patterns can change.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. And
You're so welcome.
and if you're interested in taking her masterclass, the link will be wherever you're watching or listening to this. And thank you so much for such amazing information. I love doing this podcast because every guest has a different spin on things, and even in different seasons for everybody, or people that they can
Absolutely.
relate to. You always get that nugget. You always get a nugget.
Yeah, I love it. I love having these conversations too, because you're right. There's so many different things that are helpful and different things that are right for different people. So I love having these conversations.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rochelle, and leaving you a gentle reminder to slow down and enjoy life. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening today. If this episode gave you something, there's more waiting for you inside the Relaxation Lounge. The tools, the community, the support, all in one place. Come and exhale with us. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to www.therelaxationlounge.info, and we'll see you in the lounge.